Thank you, Anthony. How close do I need to hold this? Or somebody at the back can control that? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, first off, thank you so much. I'm still getting it. Mari. Sorry for that. But thank you so much for your insight and wisdom. I particularly resonate with the focus on paying attention. It reminds me of is it a Mary Oliver quote, like our first and most important work is to pay attention, or something along those lines. It seems to me there's a deep truth in that. And it also reminds me of the Hopkins poem, Christ Plays in 10,000 Places. Like, I wonder what we find when we start to pay attention to reality, to things that are actually real. When I thought about what I might say tonight, I hadn't yet seen your paper, so most of my comments will, and maybe in the conversation afterwards, there'll be a bit more back and forth. But I was thinking about how I recently started a new venture where I co-host on a podcast. This is a new thing for me. There was a time when I asked, what is a podcast? I didn't know what that was, but okay, so I'm entering that world. And so it means that, among other things, I've started to take notice of interviewers and interviewees a little bit more. I kind of pay attention to that. And one of the things that I have noted is how often the question comes about what gives you hope. It's a question that you raised in your paper. And when I observe the questioner and then how the responses come to that, it seems to me that often what is actually being asked is, what gives you hope? And by the way, can you show me where I can buy some of that? I'd really love to have some more hope in the cupboards alongside the potatoes and the winter coats and the latest novel or whatever else. Like, I really want to get me some of that. I sense that in many people, including me, like, I want to have hope. But what do I mean by that? And what do I think others often mean by that? I think I hear, and I think this is true of me too, I want to feel confident that the ecological problems of our world will be solved. That's what I mean when I say I want to have hope. I want to feel assured that I won't have to change too much in order for this to happen. I want to know that the government is going to take care of it, or maybe the UN and their negotiators and their diplomats, or maybe there'll be some smart scientist or a clever entrepreneur or a committed protester or those fervent people at a Rocha. Maybe they'll solve it and make the key difference. That's kind of what I want. And most importantly, I think what I want, and I think what a lot of people want, is I want to avoid suffering. I want to avoid it for me, and if possible for other people too, but especially for me. And that's what I think is often behind the question about what gives you hope. I think that's what I'm often looking for. The problem is, by those definitions, I don't think I have hope. I don't think I have it. I do not feel confident or assured, nor do I expect it is likely we will avoid suffering. So it is more accurate to say that in most days, maybe it's more accurate to say, I do not feel optimistic. Nevertheless, even if I lack optimism, I still want to be hope, because I am hoping. So I might not feel optimistic, but I want to be hope because I am hoping. In fact, I think that's what Christ invites us to do. I think we are invited to be hope because we are hoping. David Orr, he's an environmental studies prof from Wycliffe College, and he considers the distinction, I want to consider the distinction he makes between optimism and hope. Listen to this. He writes, optimism is the recognition that the odds are in your favor. Hope is the faith that things will work out whatever the odds. Hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up. Hopeful people are actively engaged in defying or changing the odds. Optimism leans back, put its feet up, and wears a confident look, knowing that the deck is stacked. I know of no good reason for anyone to be optimistic about the human future, but I know a lot of reasons to be hopeful. Orr's description resonates with my experience. I don't see evidence to justify optimism, feeling comfortable, feeling confident. But then, don't we profess to be people of faith? We have long believed there are things worth doing regardless of whether we can be confident they will work or they will work out the way we want them to. I think that's partly what I heard you say, Mari, is like it's worth paying attention, regardless of how that might work or solve something. Think of any number of other examples, like how long have we been trying to solve grinding poverty or address the helplessness of various illnesses, or even like the question of prayers so fervently prayed but seemingly unanswered. Are these not also examples where there are things worth doing regardless of whether we think that it'll work? And in the face of seemingly intractable hardship or challenge, Christ followers are also called to offer our loaves and fishes, so to speak, and to wait and see what the Spirit will do when we make those offerings. Another person I want to call to mind is Václav Havel. Do you remember this fellow? He was, among many other things, one of the 20th century's most remarkable statesmen. He grew up in the Cold War, but led Czechoslovakia through the transition to becoming the Czech Republic. This is during the fall of the Soviet Union, the breakup of the Soviet Union. And I'm sure there were times in the midst of all that where the dissent and opposition that he got jailed for seemed naive and futile. Nevertheless, this is something he wrote. Hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it turns out. Hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense regardless of how it turns out. Well, I'm persuaded that God designed me and all God's image bearers to care for creation. That's something that I am convinced of. A certainty, I'm not sure I close to, but I'm convinced. My flourishing is bound up in the ways that I work towards the flourishing of fellow creatures, human and non-human. I can't flourish unless my fellow creatures also flourish. And I'm convinced that in the coming decades, the world will more desperately need exposure to people that don't have faith, hope, love. But what they need is people that live faith, hope, love. Not a possession, but something that's lived. People that the world, I think, will need people that tangibly, practically care for their fellow creatures, be they Sally or Frank or River or Eagle or Earthworm. And this is what I think maybe communities of faith can offer. Not hope as feeling confident, much less hope as commodity to possess and accumulate, but hope as a verb, particularly an imperative verb, not like, like hope, like do it, like do that. I think our world, our people, they need us to live hope, to embody hope, to do hope, put it into action. And I'm not thinking of some sort of smug, triumphal action of someone playing with a stacked deck, kind of like what Rocha was referencing. And neither am I thinking of like a naive optimism about technological solutions or government inventions. I mean, as much as those are welcome and are worthy work. But I have in mind more the committed and costly, I'm offering my loaves and fishes, that attends to and cares for harbor seals and gray jays. Not the platonic ideals of mammals and birds, but specific creatures in specific places at a specific moment in history. And I have found that living hopefully in this sort of way is only possible because I believe that the world has a Savior, and that Savior is not me. Because it's only possible because that Savior invites me to join the work of the Spirit, the one who I confess is the Lord, the giver of life. Because that Savior invites me to join the work in every moment of every day in my particular and idiosyncratic kinds of ways. I think
think it's also possible to live, hopefully, in this sort of way, I've found, because a kind of hope as lived faithfulness in action has been modeled to me by others. Now, honestly, admittedly, living in a way that seeks to embody hope like this is not easy or simple, but of course the same can be said of every aspect of Christian discipleship. We have not been promised easy, but we are promised God's presence in the midst of challenge. We've been assured that we can glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. So, let us join a groaning creation in expectant waiting for the Spirit of God to move the children of God to take up their role as earth keepers, to be hope in a groaning creation.